All right. Hello. So glad to be with y'all tonight. And I already see Zach and Nathan here in our chat. As folks come in, feel free to say hello and where you're watching from. I'm just super pumped to be with y'all tonight. It may be a surprise because I think the graphic says Ethan. I am not Ethan, if you haven't figured that out yet. I am Katie. And Ethan and I are doing a little bit of a flip this week and next week. So I'm going to be here with y'all tonight. So if folks are disappointed that this is not Ethan, I apologize. But I promise we're going to have lots of fun, and Ethan will be here with y'all next week. Cash is going to be so happy. Yeah. So as folks come in, again, feel free to tell us who you are and where you're watching from. Hi, Stacy. So good to see you too. And I know that sometimes, it's funny. I just watched viewership drop. I think folks came in and were like, nope, it's not. Oh, no, went back up. Okay, we're fine. But as we go through our kind of disclaimers and jump into stuff, I actually want to ask a question to the community to have folks start to kind of load this up in the chat. And with our faith and OCD special interest group last night, we talked about motivational OCD songs. And I would love, if folks feel comfortable, I'll go ahead and drop this in the chat. If while I'm reading the disclaimers, if you can share your OCD recovery pump up jam or something that you use throughout your treatment. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. Share your OCD recovery pump up jam while I kind of read through our disclaimers. And I see Stacy, I'm so sorry that you're struggling with your OCD. And we will definitely offer some support and love tonight. And Beth, so glad that you're here. And Chad, you are on time. I see Chris. I see Love Lana. So lots of folks jumping in tonight. So again, I'm going to read our disclaimers. As I do that, feel free to share your OCD recovery pump up jam in the chat, something that we were doing with our faith and OCD SIG last night. So really quick, this live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. You can use the IOCDF's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find-help. If I can get my words together tonight, + find help to locate a trained clinician near you. If this is a resource you haven't used before, it's one of my favorite. I probably recommend it to folks 5+ times a day. It's fantastic. You can search by training and by insurance and by location, virtual, in person, all of the things. So please check that out. Also, the International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. If you're in crisis or if you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You can also access online at www.988lifeline.org. Go to your local emergency room or call 911. And finally, we want to create a safe space tonight, and always, but tonight as we're gathering together, we really want to be kind and respectful to everyone, because at the end of the day, we're here to support one another. And I really believe that showing up on here is an opportunity to advocate and just to share experiences with one another and to get support. But in doing that, we need to be kind and respectful. And a note with that this is being broadcast on several social media platforms and is being recorded. So please keep that in mind as you comment. And yeah, very Chris, I agree. Imperfect system and yet something that I know has supported a lot of folks that I've worked with on the journey. So yeah, all of the things. No, this is not intended as therapy, but we are definitely here for support and resources and all of the things. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to see if anybody dropped in. Ooh, Zach, you're creating a moral scroot playlist. Okay, we could totally contribute to that. We were working on with the Faith and OCD SIG last night. We're doing kind of a pump up playlist. I'm thinking we can do maybe a wider OCD playlist. I know in Stick with the Ick, we have a resilience playlist, but I think there's something to this. I think we need to do just like a pump up jam event night where people can share just all their different pump up songs. So we definitely can do that. But if folks have their OCD fight song pump up jam, would love to hear it. I see What If, I'll have to look that up. What If by Low Spirit. I will definitely have to check that out. The What If piece already kind of gets me into that. This Is It by Kenny Loggins. Are there others? Okay, well, if other folks have them, would love to hear those too. Again, any kind of OCD pump up jams, would love to hear about that. So I know that a few folks have already said that they are having a tough time or they're struggling. I would love to just ask folks if you want to drop in the chat how how you're showing up tonight and where you feel like you need support. Um, Oh, Chad, that's so kind of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, we would love to have more Ixters as a part of Stick with the Echo, Scrupulosity, OCD, and anything else. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And oh, Spence, Houston, Texas. Hi. I see. Oh, this is a great song. Or wait, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't know this song. I thought I did, but now I'm not sure. Serotonin by Girl in Red. Okay, I'm gonna actually have to go back and listen to all of these that I may or may not know. Yeah. So I would love to again hear from folks how you're showing up tonight. I think it was a little bit earlier. I know Stacy, you said you're struggling with OCD. We need a referral fee. Well, I'm glad y'all like it. So that's great. I'm just glad that y'all like it. So thank you for sharing it. Sadie, I'm going through some really traumatic events regarding sickness and death, and it's been really hard to get out of the darkness. Sadie, thank you so much for sharing that. And you are more than welcome to share as much or as little as you want to share. But I'm just so sorry that you're navigating that. And I think, gosh, when we're experiencing real life traumatic events alongside OCD, it can feel so tough. A big part of my story was I experienced some really tough and traumatic deaths in my life, and my OCD latched onto those in really intense ways from a scrupulosity perspective and a harm perspective and a health perspective and just all sorts of things. And I remember feeling very much like you're describing, like it was really, really hard to get out of the darkness. It felt like I was really trapped in the dark, and that can feel so tough. So Sadie, I just want to offer that there really is so much hope. And if you're feeling the heaviness of this right now, that is so okay. And you are not alone. And if OCD is feeling extra loud in this season, it likes to do that. I think that's so hard. And I'll say for me and for others I've talked with, sometimes when we're experiencing really challenging events, I think OCD tries to make it so we don't feel, or so we worry about something else. So I really struggled with actually experiencing grief and sadness in ways that were real and tangible with what was going on in front of me, because OCD spent so much time kind of pushing it into me feeling guilty and anxious and fearful. It was like I didn't get to grieve those moments, because I always say it kind of like hijacks, at least for me, it's kind of hijacked the actual emotions and taken them to something else, where rather than experiencing joy or even grief, it's taken me to experience anxiety and guilt and shame and disgust. Yeah, I can't stop obsessing over life and death right now. I panic and I'm so heartbroken as well. Thank you for the support. Yeah, Sadie, I'm right there with you. I know that is so hard. And my biggest kind of hug and hope for you right now is that you give yourself space to feel the grief and to feel the emotions, and those spaces where OCD comes in and hijacks and is like, no, but we have to worry, or we have to feel guilty, or we have to do that we can say, okay, OCD, thank you so much for the concern and for trying to pull me into this other piece. I'm just going to let myself feel however I feel right now. I'm just going to let myself be sad. We don't have to right now figure everything out or worry about, being scared or taking responsibility. I mean, all of that stuff. So you are so worthy of just getting to feel the real feels in this moment, Sadie. And I'm sorry you're experiencing that. Thank you so much for being so honest about that. I also see, okay, so I'm going to have to listen to Serotonin by Girl in Red, because now I thought I knew what it was. Now I don't. So Numb Little Bug, if folks have not listened to that, Chad, great song. That's by, is it Emily I'm going to say her name wrong. It's Beihold, Beihold. Such a great song that came out during COVID, and that was one of my jams. So I think that's a fantastic one to listen to. Let's see. Yeah. Is a pump up jam what you listen to on the way to therapy? Can it be instrumental? Yeah, it can definitely be on the way to therapy. It can be just something to make you pumped to fight OCD. It So I'll say for me, this is kind of on a personal level, which I guess is what community conversations is. It's me and Ethan saying personal stuff about our OCD journeys. But I used to listen to a pump up jam before I did exposures. When I was going through intensive therapy, I had a therapist who was very big on putting your shoulders back and walking in confident to exposures, even if you didn't feel confident. And I would actually listen to pump up jams and try to like walk in like I was going into battle so I could be like, bring it on OCD. So I'd literally listen to pump up jams. And especially if I was doing really intensive, like multi-hour kind of exposure type things and was going to be doing a lot of response prevention work, I had exposure playlists where I would use them as kind of pump up jams. So yeah, it can be really anything that pumps you up as part of the journey. Selwyn, so good to see you. And I see so many awesome folks coming in here. Yeah, red balloon. I'm so sorry. I think it can be so hard when it feels like we're constantly giving into a compulsion. And I realized kind of with that I think I skipped over Stacy above, reassurance seeking being really hard, washing clothes over and over, hand washing. I feel like with this, it can feel so hard when it feels like we have started to engage in compulsions. And I'm curious what other folks feel like, but I feel like sometimes it can be hard to almost get out of that cycle. And I'll say for me, part of it is sometimes I'm not super nice to myself after I do a compulsion. So historically, I've engaged in a compulsion and I'm like, man, I'm so mad at myself for doing that compulsion. Oh, well, I might as well just do another one, right? I'm already kind of in that loop. I'm curious if folks relate to that. And then we do another one, and we get further down the road and it feels even harder to kind of escape that cycle. But I think for me, one of the really helpful things throughout the years has been to give myself compassion without being satisfied and to be able to say, okay, I'm going to give myself a lot of love. Of course, I engaged in a compulsion. I have OCD. This happens sometimes. This is really hard. And also, I want to do something a little bit different right now. I care about myself and my recovery so much that I'm going to make a different choice. And that can be such a small step forward. That does not have to be, I'm never going to wash or ask for reassurance ever again for the rest of my life. It might just be, I'm going to delay for 5 minutes and I'm going to celebrate that win. And I think celebrating those wins makes a really big difference. And we really turn from feeling so much shame into, oh, wait, I can do this. Kind of like the pump up jams we're talking about. And red balloon and everybody who is struggling right now. Just want folks to know that, I don't know, you are really worthy of giving yourself compassion and Stacy and also stepping forward in a different way. And we can talk about tonight what that looks like too. And Zach brought up the uncertainty. What's the core fear? And if folks aren't familiar with the terminology of core fear, the core fear is kind of at the bottom of our fear. It's kind of, we keep going down layer after layer after layer. So I'll give you kind of an example. For me, my general core fear, my primary core fear is what if I'm bad? And most of my other OCD what ifs all can tie back to that in some way, shape, or form. So even if I'll kind of say something a little bit simpler and then a little more complex. If I say, well, what if I left the stove on? To me, it goes, what if I left the stove on? To what if my house burns down? To what if people get hurt? To then what if it's my fault? To what if that means I'm a bad person? Kind of goes down that line. The same with, oh my gosh, what if I offended someone? Well, what if their feelings are hurt? Well, what if I intentionally hurt their feelings? Maybe and it goes all the way down until what if I'm a bad person? So a lot of times we can kind of trace whatever it is we're experiencing all the way down the line. And even my fears around harm of, oh my gosh, what if I accidentally murdered someone and forgot about it, could be traced all the way down to what if this means I'm a bad person? So a lot of times there's some core fear that most of our obsessions link back to. Let's see. Songs. Welcome to the jungle. I'm going to be singing that now. I can hear that like in my head right now. Yeah, red balloon. This is a big one for Ethan in our household too, of getting a little bit of a sore throat and it being hard to not continually check that you don't have a fever. And I think for this is such a great opportunity to do, even what I was talking about just a second ago, that you can give yourself some compassion of, oh, OCD is totally latching onto the fact that I have a little bit of a sore throat and that things feel really hard with OCD right now because so many people are sick. Like, of course that's come up. But you know what? I'm going to try to do something really hard right now. I'm going to try to wait, another 15 or 20 minutes before I check my temperature. I'm going to be willing to sit with some of that discomfort that's bubbling up in favor of making OCD a little smaller. And Red Balloon, maybe even listen to one of these pump up songs and we say, maybe I do. Maybe I have I am not going to find out right now though, because I am going to listen to my pump up song and make OCD smaller in this moment, which I know feels really hard. But I also believe that y'all can do this. I recommend The Ecstasy of Gold from the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly movie soundtrack. I don't know what that is either. These are so many songs that we need to be adding to playlists. Yeah, and I love Zach's kind of explaining what some of these core pieces might look like. What is the root of it? Harm to self, loss of control, fear of fear. These can all be core fears. Oh, and good. I'm glad that folks are resonating with this. Carissa, I have music. I love music and have used music every day for music therapy. I think there's something so powerful, right, about music. And I think it's one of the few things that almost kind of transports us to a different space when we listen to it. And it's actually, I will say, been something for me, even with work over the last couple of years, that I used to work in silence. And now when I'm not working directly with people or doing consultations, I'll listen to music and it totally flips my mood, my experience, my feeling pumped up to fight OCD, all of that kind of thing. Beth, my goodness, next month will be 6 years since I practically gave up my life to the fear of getting COVID and long COVID. Wow. I think so. There's a lot. I think there's a lot there in that, Beth. And I think like you've come so far in those 6 years. I know you're doing some things now that you definitely were not doing then. And I think it's also kind of neat to think, okay, 6 years, what do we want to mark this 6th year with? And I would almost ask you, what is something, it can be small, it can be big, whatever it is makes a difference. What is something next month for this 6th year that you can use to make OCD smaller as a 6-year anniversary? What can we do to punch OCD in the face? Is there an exposure that your therapist has been talking with you about that you haven't felt ready to do yet, but that we might get pumped up for year 6 to say, I am so ready to punt OCD out the door? I would love to hear what that might look like. Yes. Yeah, I love these reframes. Love. Okay, I think I know what that was in reference to, but love regardless. Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, did anybody see the show King of Queens? There's a Spence on that show. Yes. Sadie, okay, since I'm dealing with all these traumatic events surrounded around sickness and death, my OCD is making everything about worrying about everyone and my animals getting sick or dying. Yeah. Sadie, again, want to just hold the fact that is so hard. And also want to name that I think OCD is a real jerk because it tells us that when we're doing compulsions, we're protecting the things that we care about. So most likely, I would say your OCD is saying right now, well, I have to do these compulsions. I have to worry. I have to prevent to make sure that I'm okay, the people around me, my animals, all of those things. And here's the reality. OCD is lying, and it's actually taking you away from the stuff that you care about. In these compulsions, in this rumination, in whatever it is, it's actually taking you away from spending time with yourself in your life, with your pets, with your friends, with your family. And it's even taking away this experience of grieving. And what I always tell folks is, OCD is literally ripping the thing away from you that it says it's protecting. And I think one of the biggest leaps of faith that you can take is saying, I'm going to give myself permission to grieve without trying to fix and without trying to, keep everybody safe. And that's actually my way of honoring, maybe those that I've lost, or being able to spend time with my loved ones or myself or my pets, which I know is so hard. I was in that space for a very long time, Sadie, and I know it's really hard, but I just want you to know that that's what I wish somebody had said to me, like OCD is literally taking away the stuff that it says it's protecting. Country music helps me relax. Yeah, down here in Georgia, so definitely relate to that, Stacy. Yeah. Red balloon, pretty existential, I guess. Ultimately, the fear of being sick so I can die. Yeah, and that's scary. And I think OCD, right, will come in and say, well, how could we ignore this, right? Like, this is the scariest possible thing. And I'll say, whatever our individual themes are, they're the scariest things for us. One of the things that I hear from folks every day is, well, I could embrace uncertainty about literally anything except this theme. Like, this is the one theme that I can't sit with. And that's really true of all of our themes, whether it's about death or about faith and salvation, or about being a good person, or about safety or safety of loved ones, or being a good mom. It's whatever the most important thing to you is. It really makes it so that it feels impossible to let that go. So of course it's going to come in there. Red balloon, I think it's so great that you kind of got to that core fear, and it's going to say, well, if I don't check my temperature, then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And what if it ended up here? And how could I possibly let that happen? And we get to slow that down a little bit and say, there might be some distortions. OCD might be making me jump from A to Z. And the reality is it's taking away our life in this very moment. It really is. Yeah. Yeah, I think this actually can be an OCD dynamic for folks. I've worked in silence, fearing that it would distract me and I would lose my productivity. Yeah, I used to always like work in quiet. And one of the big shifts for me actually was when I worked in school chaplaincy, because I had to learn to not work in quiet, because I usually had like 30 teenagers running around my office while I was like trying to write a sermon. But it taught me like, oh, wait, maybe we don't have to be totally 100% focused all the time. Maybe we can, do some different things. And today that looks like for me listening to pump up jams while I write or do scrupulosity work and, all sorts of things. Yeah, I think this is so common for folks, Zach. I've spent my fair share of time in the ER thinking I was dying. And honestly, this comes up with health anxiety. This can even come up with panic attacks and things like that, where it really feels like something catastrophic's happening. I'm curious if anybody here is watching The Pit right now. Season 2 of The Pit is kind of slowly coming out. We love The Pit in our house. Ethan and I were watching it last night. But I think it definitely can be triggering or be really used as an intentional exposure for folks with OCD, because even Ethan and I were watching it last night, and y'all know he has health anxiety. And we would kind of get to certain points and he was like, whoa, can that happen? Wait, do I need to? I'm like, nope, we're not going down that road. But I think that can be really common for folks. For COVID to disappear into nothingness. Oops, no, Beth, we're not gonna go there. I want to hear the stuff of acknowledging that, oh man, there's still an aspect of it here. And what are we going to do to punch it in the face? That's what I want to hear about. And I know you can do this. Okay. That's what I thought, Chris. Yeah. I love the flip side. And I actually really love taking sometimes the what ifs. What if I'm awful, and flipping it to, uncertainty means really anything's possible. So flipping it to, well, what if I'm actually really cool? I think there can be something really, really neat about that. Yeah. I don't know where Cash is. Beth, perhaps Cash came on briefly and saw that it was me and not Ethan, and completely ditched us. Yeah, Zach, I absolutely agree. The Overcoming Health Anxiety group, and they have kind of a community similar to what we have with Stick with the Ick and things like that. They are awesome. They're really, really awesome. I think that's a great resource. And the book, the Overcoming Health Anxiety book too, is absolutely fantastic. So highly recommend. Yeah. And Isostasia, yeah, I'm not sure. I've missed Isostasia too. So for folks who are here with us, so glad you're here. And I know sometimes we miss our friends, and hope that everybody's doing okay too. Yeah. Yeah, Rob, seeing people in a retirement type community with illness and all of those things, and OCD revolving around health anxiety, is super, super hard. Early, before school chaplaincy work for me, I worked in a continuing care retirement community, and had quite a few folks actually who are navigating OCD. And it's really hard when you're in a living environment with folks and you see people with different illnesses. And I think OCD can latch onto that in really intense ways. So, Rob, if you feel comfortable answering, I would love to hear from you. How do you navigate that? What's been helpful to you? Has ERP been helpful? Do you have certain kind of strategies to be able to say, okay, OCD is going to get really loud around this, and I am going to choose to continue to move forward with my values? Curious kind of what that looks like for you. Not that I'm aware of. Let's see. Was that in reference to? Okay, I wasn't sure if that was in reference to my question. Well, if it was, I would really love to have you think of something to punch OCD in the face for that 6-month piece. Yeah, we're gonna hope that those folks are just out living life, having fun. Yeah, I love all of the things that folks are sharing, and I think being able to use music and self-compassion alongside ERP can be such a beautiful thing. And I will say, Carissa, you are so not alone with the harm OCD piece. I am a minister who struggled so deeply with harm OCD to the point that I called the police on myself for crimes that I hadn't committed, just in case. Yeah. Chris, whenever I get sick, I hate the uncertainty of not knowing what I have, because I don't want to feel the difficult symptoms last longer than I have to. I think this is a really tough piece. Oh, and Rob, not at all. That was I think, a significant part of the conversation times 10,000. I really actually want to hear how you navigate not triggering at all. And I think we're in this space here. I know we're talking, sorry if I'm talking to folks on a couple different platforms that y'all aren't seeing, but I think it's really important to share where we are. And if things feel a little bit heightening, that's okay. We get to navigate that together. That's what the OCD kind of treatment journey and ERP is all about. But I think the illness piece right now for folks is really hard, especially because so many people are sick, and there's fears around that, and that can be super, super hard. Oh, good, Zach. I actually don't, if you want to share with us the 3 kinds of health anxiety, what they are. I don't know what they are, but I would be super curious. One of the awesome leaders of that community, I just submitted a talk with for the IOCDF conference that I hope gets accepted, fingers crossed, but it's on contamination OCD. And we're talking about the various types of contamination OCD. Because I think a lot of times we talk about physical, but we're also talking about emotional contamination and spiritual contamination, which are really common for folks too. Phil is, I think that's a fallacy. I think actually Cash loves Ethan more than all of us. He just likes to give him a hard time. Is always. I hope, yeah, y'all. Nobody has said anything. Oh, okay. I'm not going to give reassurance. We maybe could have all said something wrong, especially me, since I'm the one talking. Probably me. Probably definitely me. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, Beth answered my question here. I would like to go for a walk to punch OCD. I love that, Beth. And I would love to write this down and be able to check in with you in a couple of weeks to see if you did that, because you are so worthy of doing that. And the irony is, so often the things that we really can do to punch OCD in the face are actually just going out and stepping toward our values, regardless of what OCD has to say, which is pretty cool. Yeah, to me, it's, for core fear, is the other person a bad person? Yeah, it can be about us. It can also be about people around us. Absolutely. Let's see. Love all the prayers, Carissa. Thank you. We're so glad that you're here. Rob, I do ERPs to try to deal with the health anxiety issues, but I'm moving a bit too slowly and use avoidance too often. So, I mean, I want to name that you recognizing that is such an awesome thing. And, I always tell folks, I don't know that, I think we're hard on ourselves about like, oh, I should be moving faster. I don't know the situation, but I also don't know that you're moving too slowly. I think sometimes when we think of ERP, we assume that we have to do the biggest and the hardest exposures right now in this moment. And I would say that's actually not the case. Often, when you're working with an OCD specialist, you'll develop a hierarchy and you'll start with kind of lower level exposures for you because everybody's different and we'll kind of build up based on your SUDS. But I think the bigger piece is the RP, not so much the E. The E is important, right? That's kind of what gets our anxiety up or our discomfort up. But it's really all about that response prevention. And a lot of times, Dr. Emily Bailey, who I do a lot of work with, will say little E, big RP. And I love that concept. And the idea is, yes, okay, we're doing the exposure over here, but we're really focusing on the response prevention because that's where the magic happens. The response prevention is all about not doing the compulsion. And that's really where we get to kind of punch OCD in the face. So with that, I think, instead of being hard on yourself about, oh, I'm moving too slowly with my exposures or with my ERPs, it might actually be noticing that avoidance piece and saying, well, how do I want to do something a little different? How do I want to do some more response prevention so that I'm not avoiding as much? What's maybe one thing I want to focus on not avoiding this week that I want to step toward that's in line with my values? And even again, recognizing that I'm avoiding too often, that knowledge and that insight, I think, is such a beautiful, awesome thing because we get to make the choice to maybe try something a little different, even if it feels scary. Yeah. So Beth, I think sometimes when and yes, this is real and tragic and really hard, but I think the interesting thing with OCD is it always takes the worst case scenario, and I'm curious if others resonate with this. It always kind of takes that worst case scenario and it says, well, this is definitely what's going to happen to you, right? It doesn't take all of the other people, maybe in your crab group or in these groups that have potentially gotten COVID or have gotten sick and have gotten better. It doesn't take that into account. It always just takes that one thing that we hear that's really scary. And I think we have to remember that OCD latches onto that and uses that and amplifies that, but never all of the other things. And we have to think about, well, what is OCD taking away in favor of that? It's like, okay, we're afraid because of that of being bedbound or having that happen. And it's like, well, OCD is it's telling us that it's protecting us from that, actually is keeping us in our house, is keeping us kind of in a state of what we're afraid of to begin with. And I really believe that it amplifies and scares us into almost, I don't know, it kind of creates the reality that we're afraid of. And the example that I always give with, for instance, POCD, there's a lot of parents and teachers who navigate POCD because their kids or their students are the most important to them. And I'll hear a parent say, well, because of my POCD, I'm not going to pick up my child because I just want to make sure that I'm safe. I just want to make sure that they're okay. And here's the irony. OCD is saying you are protecting your child by not doing this. You're protecting your relationship with your child. And actually, it's harming the relationship with your child because you now have a kid that's not getting picked up by their parent or not having interaction with their parent. So we have OCD saying, oh, we're protecting them, but it's actually creating that reality that you're afraid of to begin with, which is, your child not feeling that support and love. Yeah, love all of this support here. Okay, I'm seeing if there's any questions here. Yeah, so this is a great question. If folks have other questions, feel free to pop these in. I know this is kind of more of a conversation tonight, but if folks have questions, I will make sure to keep a lookout for the question marks to answer those too. But is making something like thermometers inaccessible valid management? Like, can you give them to a family member and ask them to put them away? So there's a couple different responses to this question. I think that definitely can be a part of the process. And I'll say, even in our household, I'm not sure if Ethan's listening. Sorry, Ethan, if you are, for getting personal. But we've done that where health anxiety has been really intense and he has had difficulty not checking his temperature. I have hid the thermometer. So I think that can be a helpful fix at certain points. But I also think long term, the goal is for individuals to be able to navigate the anxiety and discomfort on their own without engaging in the compulsion. So, for instance, I think, like with Ethan, the important thing was eventually for him to be able to say, and I'm going to be able to see this every day and I'm not going to use it. So I think it can be a really important piece, but we want to at some point kind of lessen that. The same with OCD, with accommodations in school, even with maybe having the chance to engage or to check things in a specific way for a short period of time. We always want to be able to kind of lessen that. And that's what I think of with things like this too. We never want family members to feel like they are feeding the OCD, but we also don't want family members to accommodate, which we typically think of as things like a family member checking something for you or giving you reassurance. But it also can be them preventing you from doing a compulsion long term, where at the beginning that can be such a helpful piece. And we want to lessen that so that you know that you can, in fact, do it on your own. The same way a therapist will eventually lessen their support with you. So I think it's a yes and good first step and kind of moving to something different. Let's see. Yeah, Zach, I love that you're teaching everybody about health anxiety in here. This is awesome. Oh, wait, where was the one? Okay, I wanted to put this up. So basically it's 1, worry about illness with no symptoms present. 2, worry about symptom induced by worry about symptoms. 3, forget it's like the general OCD compulsing around health. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Those 3, that's really, really interesting. Thank you so much for highlighting that for us. Yeah, Chris said exactly what I just said in a much more concise way about accommodations as a buffer, but eventually moving away from them. So, Chris, thank you for saying that more clearly than the 5 minutes that I took to say that. Let's see. Yeah, OCD tells us it's always going to be the worst of the worst that happens to us. I think I can't remember if this was in a community conversations or I think it was actually in a Stick with the Ick live stream. A couple of folks are in both, so you can tell me what this was in. But I think I was talking about the fact that even with uncertainty, we always assume the negative. Like we never wake up and go outside and we're like, wow, uncertainty. I could totally find $1 million on my porch this morning. It's like, no, our brain immediately goes to the worst possible things that can happen. And if we hear one bad thing, we're like, oh, nope, that's it. That's going to be me. That's going to happen to me. We don't think about all of the good things. Or if we hear something awful happen to one person and something really great happen to one person, we never get stuck on the really great thing. And OCD is such a jerk like that. I always say it's like we kind of have these dark filters on our glasses where we look around and we see everything in a really gloomy, scary way, as opposed to the flip side. Yeah, Stacy, this is a great question. How do I stop getting reassurance from my mom? I ask and she answers. I don't think she wants to see me hurt. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on this. One, I'm curious how much information your mom has on OCD, and does she know that that reassurance isn't helpful? And if she doesn't have a ton of information, I actually think it could be, or she doesn't necessarily know how to support. I think there could be a great learning opportunity, but when you're not feeling heightened. And I think you could even sit down with her and say, so mom, I know that sometimes I ask for reassurance, and unfortunately, reassurance is a compulsion and it just makes OCD stronger. So I would love, when I'm asking for reassurance, if you could help remind me that that's not helpful in those moments. And it is hard for parents. I think it's hard for loved ones because we want to see that person not hurting. We want to reassure, but I think it can be helpful to tell her that when she's reassuring you, she's actually reassuring the OCD. She's not really reassuring you. She's actually making OCD bigger. And I think a really great thing that we can tell parents to do or tell spouses to do, this is how Ethan and I navigate, is to respond to the feeling as opposed to the content. So you could encourage your mom when you ask for reassurance to say something like, oh, Stacy, I know you're really hurting right now. And I know that you have so much anxiety. I want to sit with you in the midst of that, but I'm not going to talk to you about this content because I think it might feed your OCD. Um, I know that this is so much easier said than done because I spent years getting reassurance from my parents. I have really visceral memories, even when serving in school chaplaincy, of sitting in my office and calling my mom to have her check phone records to try to make sure I hadn't murdered people. There's a long story of how this made sense in my mind, which it really doesn't. But I remember her actually calling Verizon for me and like pulling phone records so that I would feel better. And she didn't know a ton about OCD. I think she knew that this probably wasn't helpful, but she didn't want to see me hurting. She saw me in so much pain. And I remember I kept saying, if I just get reassurance, if I just get certainty about this, I'll feel better. And she wanted me to. But it kept feeding it. And I think it ended up being really helpful for her when I did eventually talk to her and say, okay, so as much as I want the reassurance in that moment, it actually is making my OCD stickier. And she stopped giving it. And I will say that was really hard. I got really pissed. And sometimes we do lash out at our loved ones when they don't give us the reassurance that we want. But again, it can be really helpful, I think, for them to know too, that's the OCD talking as opposed to us. And that it actually means we're making OCD smaller in those moments. Kind of think about, anybody here watch Stranger Things? Love Stranger Things. This reference might make absolutely no sense if you have not watched Stranger Things. But like when the fire gets close to the Demogorgons, or am I saying this right? But yeah, when the fire gets close and they kind of go, ah, and kind of, all of that kind of stuff, that's what I imagine OCD is doing when we refuse to give reassurance. I imagine it's kind of like making that screeching sound and kind of like curling up. And us getting upset at our loved one is actually, in some ways, a sign that OCD is screaming right now. It doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong. OCD needs to be positive. You'll be fine. Nothing bad will happen. You're great. Yeah, that's what OCD wants. OCD wants total certainty that everything will be fine. But unfortunately, we can't get that with or without OCD. What does OCD get from torturing us anyway? So I have an interesting, so I talk about OCD in a couple ways. I definitely think OCD is a jerk and a bully and a con artist and all of these things. But sometimes I will say it has been helpful for me to remember that OCD is my brain trying to protect me, but just in a really unhelpful way. So I always think I have kind of an alarm in my brain that keeps going off when it doesn't need to go off. It's kind of like a broken fire alarm. Even when there's not fire and there's not smoke, it goes off. But it's not because it wants to hurt me. It's because it wants to keep me safe. And it gets confused and it gets scared and it sees things that it thinks are a threat and it tells me because it really cares about me and wants me to be safe. So sometimes I'll flip. Sometimes I just call OCD a jerk and say I hate it. And other times I'll flip it and say like, oh, man, my OCD again, trying to protect me in really unhelpful ways. And sometimes I'll imagine it as this little troll behind me with like a runny nose and like dragging a blanket that's following me around like, Katie, excuse me. Just want to make sure you're safe. And that can be a helpful reframe too of it not necessarily trying to torture us, but her brain trying to help us in a way that just doesn't actually help us. And I don't know if that's helpful for y'all. That's been something that's been meaningful to me. Yeah, but it does. It lies like a dog. Absolutely. Yeah. My OCD is so scary for the most part. It makes me physically sick and not able to do anything. Sadie, I know you were talking about the grief piece earlier too, and the trauma piece. And I relate to you so much because this is, I think, similar to some of what I navigated. When I finally stopped fully engaging in compulsions and was fully kind of back in my life, I would still get so anxious that I would get physically ill. And I remember teaching in my educational chaplaincy role and was teaching comparative religions and would teach 4 sections a day outside of kind of the other aspects of my role. And I would physically run to the bathroom between sections sorry, emetophobia folks, but to physically get sick, to physically vomit because I felt so anxious. I felt physically sick. And I think sometimes folks don't realize that we can actually get so anxious or so guilty or so disgusted that we feel ill. And at least for me, it made it feel that much more real. But the reality is it is our brain tricking us, trying to keep us safe, giving us these visceral reactions. And I really believe that with treatment and with time, it does shift where it doesn't feel that bad forever. But I know in the moment it is so hard. And it makes it kind of like, well, of course we want to do a compulsion when we feel that sick and that scared. It makes a lot of sense. Um, Katie, when we go to heaven, will we meet the OCD God or the non-OCD God? I would say the non-OCD God, but I would say on this earth, for many people with scrupulosity, we end up unfortunately worshiping OCD as opposed to God. And I say that often. I work with people from a lot of different faith backgrounds, but really across religious and spiritual traditions. I see a lot of people that end up kind of worshiping OCD as opposed to God, or as opposed to the divine, or however they identify within their faith tradition. And the irony is, so many people, especially with scrupulosity, end up kind of following something that doesn't even necessarily align with their theology, just because they're scared, and just because OCD feels so scary about saying, "But what if?" So I think that's why I always say ERP is very much a spiritual practice, because we have the opportunity to stop worshiping OCD and actually reconnect with worshiping the divine, or with our faith, or with life in a way that's meaningful to us. So no, I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, I mentioned this before. I wonder how my OCD takes a back seat when my pets are involved. I bought power stations to use in my room in case the power went out, electric blankets to plug them in. So I just want to make sure. Oh, for the crab tanks, if power stayed out for a long time, I'd have to go to a hotel, have to save my pets. Yeah. So it's interesting kind of what you're saying. And I want to make sure I understand that OCD kind of takes a backseat when your pets are involved, because your pets feel so much more significant and so much more important. And I heard this from someone over the last week who was experiencing a challenge in their family. And they said, okay, OCD actually got a little quieter because this thing felt so much more significant than what OCD was throwing out. And I actually think those can be really liberating moments where we get to kind of see through the cracks or the looking glass of OCD, or we get to kind of see the matrix where it's like, wait, maybe it isn't as urgent as it tells me it is all the time. Phyllis, yes, I can be bad about seeking my spouse's reassurance. I told her not to accommodate me, but sometimes I really, really, really want her to. Phyllis, me too. Ethan knows that I don't want him to accommodate me or reassure me, but when I am in a tough spot, I can be a little pushy and be like, no, but can't you just do this one thing this one time? Come on, please. And I'm very thankful that generally he says no and lets me be mad at him, because that's how I make OCD smaller. But it can be so challenging because we say that thing and then in the moment it feels so urgent just to get it figured out. Yeah, I can't post a link either, but the No CD podcast, facing health anxiety fears, a guide to taking back control, get to know OCD, episode 22. Definitely recommend. Thank you, Zach, for that. I also have sought a lot of reassurance from my parents. Yeah, I think this is so common, especially with people in our lives that we're comfortable with, whether that's a friend, a parent, a spouse. And it makes sense because it's, well, I would say so many of us mask maybe with people that we aren't quite as comfortable with, right? So I was unfortunately really good at living my entire life as kind of a public figure and masking what I was experiencing with my OCD. But that wasn't the same thing with my family. I asked them for a lot of reassurance because I felt comfortable with them actually seeing what I was experiencing. And it almost made it that much worse in my private life because I masked so heavily in my public life that as soon as I was in my private life, it's like, I need all of the reassurance. And I think it's so hard because for that reason, it sometimes becomes very much a family illness. And everyone kind of gets looped into OCD's narrative, and that can be so hard. Yeah, she does know it's not helpful. And Stacey, maybe that's even because it makes sense that she's still wanting to give you reassurance when you're in the throes of that. Maybe it's you guys talking through when you're not feeling heightened, a plan of, hey, when I ask for reassurance, here's actually what would be helpful, as opposed to just saying, don't give me reassurance. Maybe here's another way that you could support me. And again, here's like how you can sit with me through these emotions. Here's something different that we could do. Yeah, Emily, I'm trying to be aware lately of how much I mentally reassure myself. So tricky because I don't even need anyone else around to do it. Yes, Emily, this is such a tricky one. And mental compulsions are so hard too because we can't see them, right? And I think so many people think, well, I don't even have compulsions. I just have obsessions. Nope. Often we have mental compulsions. And for a long time, I didn't know that I was doing mental compulsions, whether that was reassurance or mental review or mental checking or memory hoarding. I mean, so many different things that we can do with this. But it can be easy to fall into a habit of reassuring ourselves, even if that's just thinking through, hey, here's some things that I did earlier today. I want to make sure I did it right. Was that okay? Oh, it probably was. That fuels the OCD cycle. But I think one of the neat things with this is just straight up awareness and being able to recognize when it comes up. So I really, really loved in my own journey starting to pick out where I was reassuring myself or ruminating or doing a mental compulsion. And I tried to flip it to a win when I would notice, as opposed to going, man, I'm reassuring myself again. I would actually try to say, oh, cool. I just noticed that I'm reassuring myself. So I get to make an effort to come back to the moment. And I would do like a 5 senses or a mindfulness exercise. And maybe 3 seconds later, I would notice myself doing it again and would try to come back to the moment again. But I think it's neat that you're recognizing that you're doing it, because each time you do, you can say, oof, I get a choice right here to do something a little different. And I think that can start to be a place to begin to shift. Does anybody have family members, spouses, et cetera, watching these live streams? I think it'd be so helpful for them to learn about how to really help. Yeah, Beth, I definitely see family members on here sometimes, but y'all are more than welcome to invite family members and friends to be with us live or to watch the recordings, and always love, having supporters on here too, because it does very much become a family illness. Okay, let's see. Oh, I love that. You are famous, Phyllis. We love you. Love, love, love. Yes. Okay. And Chris, yeah, we totally have the hookup. If you want to see the villain from Stranger Things house in Georgia, we found that out at a recent event. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Sadie, 10,000%. And OCD is, oh gosh, I have so many thoughts about this, but I feel like OCD is like the ultimate Vecna, like 10,000%. It really is. Okay. I'm glad folks resonated with that. Oh, okay. Spence, I'm glad that you related to that. It helps to objectify OCD as a villain or a pest, but it's ultimately like most like an overweening, overprotective parent. Yeah, I think both can be so helpful. And that second for me has really helped again, as opposed to me getting really mad at my brain, to saying, okay, my brain, it's annoying, but it's trying to help me. Not in a actually helpful way, but it's trying to help me. Yeah, of course, Rob. And I'm always, if y'all have questions, I am kind of an open book at this point. I live and breathe and work in the OCD space, and I'm happy to share anything about my own story, if it feels helpful and motivating. So I really believe, as somebody who, as recent as, yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, as recent as, and at the time, I mean, I was working like 70 hours a week at that point, was still doing grief, trauma, loss. There wasn't a psychologist in that space. So I was doing really intense work, teaching all sorts of stuff, and was still pretty sick and was getting physically ill. And it felt so hard at the time. And I'm so glad, gosh, I gutted it out. And I remember, actually, I can like see myself in the bathroom. I remember getting sick and being like, I just want to do a compulsion. I just want to do a compulsion. It was like withdrawals. And I am so glad that I definitely didn't do it perfectly, but that I kind of kept on that road, and it's why I got better, and it's why I really love the life that I live now. And it wasn't easy. It sucked. It was really hard. But as of 2019, I didn't think I'd ever get better. I did not think there was any hope for me to live a life that was meaningful or that was full. And I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I didn't think it was possible for me. And I'm really thankful to other advocates and watching folks and see that it was possible for them. And I want folks to know, as somebody who was been there and who was really sick and who really suffered and struggled, you can so get better no matter where you are. And I really believe that. Yeah, and I'm 10 minutes behind this comment. I'm like that too. How is it almost 8? Time flies when you're getting free therapy. It's not therapy, disclaimer. Oh. But we're not going to say that to Ethan. Ethan's going to be back with y'all next week, and you better be telling him, Smith is the best that ever was. I do use my husband for reassurance. I will look into some new ideas for that. I understand about the spiritual part. When I first got sick, I felt like I did something bad. Oh yeah, it can so feel like we're being punished when that's not remotely the case at all. And that's such a trick also of OCD. But I think the piece with your husband, again, like I was saying before, it can be really helpful to say, okay, don't reassure me, but sit with me in that emotion. Tell me that you know that it sucks, that I feel what I'm feeling right now, and sit with me in that. So Ethan, and sometimes I'll still get frustrated with him, but when things are intense, he'll sit with me and say, I know you're feeling guilty right now, because guilt is my primary piece. I know you feel shame. Not going to give you reassurance, but can I hold your hand in this? Can we ride this out together? And that, in the moment you're like, no, I want reassurance. But actually, I think, gosh, is so much more helpful. It really is. When did you realize reassurance was not helpful? That's a great question. I think I actually can kind of pinpoint that. I really can, actually. Ironically, I don't know that everybody can, but Beth, for me, I've navigated OCD since before I can remember. Some of my earliest memories involved OCD. Was really good at shoving it down and pretending I didn't have these things going on. I didn't know it was OCD. Went to lots of the wrong kinds of therapy, all sorts of things. But by the time I got to grad school, I was in my very first year of my Master of Divinity at Emory. I was going to seminary, and I lived in a condo and was fully into this kind of checking routine at night. And it got to the point that I really wasn't sleeping, because it would take up to 6 hours for me, because I would wait until it felt right. I would check and see myself walking through. I would lay down in bed. I would have to lay down first, and then I would get up and I would go check the stove, the oven, the front lock, the back lock, and then walk back through, then pray, and then get in bed. And then if it didn't feel right, I would do it again. And it got to the point where that took on some different turns where I'd actually also walk down to the parking garage to make sure everybody was okay. And then I would take pictures of all of those things. And I would take multiple pictures over the course of like 20 rounds of this. And then I would send them to my mom. My mom, who lived in Baltimore when I lived in Atlanta, would look through all of these pictures and tell me that it really was okay and that things were really locked. Now, I started to recognize, as this got bigger and bigger, and as more and more hours got tacked on, that this wasn't actually helpful. But then I was taking a course at the School of Public Health at the time where we learned about OCD, ironically, and actually learned about compulsions, and reassurance was one of them. So this was really cool for me. And it immediately kind of struck a chord with me, where I was like, oh my gosh, I have OCD. That's what I have. And like, this is getting worse because I'm doing all these compulsions, and then I'm asking my mom for reassurance. Like and actually that was the time when I first decided I was going to get treatment, but unfortunately was up and coming in ministry and was told not to. And that's a whole different story of why I didn't get treatment for a long time that we can get into on another day. But now I'm a very big fan of course, folks getting treatment, because I think it makes us better ministers and better professionals, and there's no shame in that, and all sorts of things. Yeah, I see lots of folks saying rumination playing a big role. Oh my gosh, it really is 8. Okay, I'm gonna see if there's any more questions and scroll through here. This went super fast. Oh yeah, memory hoarding. Carissa, memory hoarding, similar to when you hoard physical objects, if you're kind of collecting them or trying to store them, memory hoarding is you're trying to remember all of these specific things in a specific way or a specific order or all of the details. So sometimes people who are navigating memory hoarding will actually take time throughout the day to think through all of these specific things that they're trying to remember to make sure that they're remembering perfectly, to make sure that they're remembering specific details. Sometimes they'll even write down specific details and check their mind to make sure that they're remembering everything correctly. So I think of it as hoarding just like we do with items, only it's something that's happening in our mind. Yeah. Yeah, great question. How do we know when it's okay to seek reassurance or when we're doing it too much? I heard an OCD therapist say it's okay to seek reassurance. Everybody does it at times, but when it's repeated, it's a problem. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a difference between assurance and reassurance. And for those of us with OCD, I don't even tend to use the word assurance because I think sometimes there can be too much certainty with that. I like to say affirmation's okay, but reassurance isn't. And I think of affirmation as the first time we're asking a question that we actually don't know the answer to, or the first time we're asking for feedback on something that we haven't gotten feedback on yet. As soon as we get into more than one time, that's where it becomes reassurance. But I think it's okay for an initial time if you don't know the answer, or if you genuinely have a question about something, or genuinely want to know, like, oh, well, how did that thing go? What do you think? And I think we can ask, is this from a space of genuine curiosity, or is this from a space of gut wrenching checking? And if we're asking it a second time, reassurance. And also, if we're asking what seems to be a new question, but it's kind of tied to something that we've already asked, I like to tell folks that's also reassurance. And I think OCD can be really sneaky because it might say, well, you didn't ask it exactly like this last time. And it's like, nope, we're gonna go with how we rolled with it last time. But I agree. It's okay to ask about something the first time or to information gather, just not to continue to do it repetitively with the function of alleviating discomfort. Um, let's see. Yeah, seeing if there's any more questions here. Yeah, exactly what Emily's saying. Yeah, same deal. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it was about 7 years of yeah, there's a lot there that I won't get into here because I'm gonna cry, but it really it's why I love to do the work that I get to do today. I feel so blessed to get to work with folks who are struggling with issues of OCD and faith and scrupulosity, because I've been there, and I didn't think I would be here. I didn't think I would get better. I don't know that I thought I would actually be here at all, to be completely honest. And it feels really I don't know. It's still really moving to me when I think about where I was and how sick I was and where I am now and this work that I get to do and to be here with all of you and just to love this. And I want really everybody to know that no matter how low you are, there really is hope. There really is. And I want to say for you and you and you, because I used to think when folks said that it was for somebody else and not for me. And that's just not the case. Yeah, Carissa, 10,000%. I was a chaplain serving in a really public role who was worried that I secretly murdered people, was terrified, navigated POCD, harm OCD, false memory OCD, scrupulosity, terrified to talk about my themes. And I think this comes up a lot where folks don't even want to share it with their therapist because they're worried that their therapist is going to misunderstand or think they're dangerous, when that couldn't be further from the truth. OCD is ego dystonic, which means it directly opposes the stuff like that we care so deeply about. Oh, thank you, Emily. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Phyllis, that was a big part of my journey. I didn't get treatment for a long time because I was told that I wouldn't pass my psych evaluations and I wouldn't get ordained and that I was up and coming in ministry and that nobody would respect me. So I shoved down, actually studied how to lie on my psych evaluations so that OCD wouldn't show up. And then when I got into my first huge ministry, really public role, my OCD just totally exploded. But I had so much shame around it, shoved it down, ended up ultimately doing intensive treatment at night in secret virtually before that was like a thing. And it saved my life, absolutely saved my life. But I wish I would have done it so much sooner. So much sooner. Oh, y'all. Yes, we'd love to have folks as a part of Stick with the Ick and join the No CD stream tomorrow too. I'm sure Patrick McGrath would love to have everybody on there with y'all. And also IOCDF stream tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Y'all too. We're doing this together. We are doing this together. Let's kick some OCD butt together. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Thank y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you all for your time and guidance and for just the love and just for being here together. So as we close out tonight, I do want to remind y'all that there is an Ask the Experts tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern right here. And also that the IOCDF is a donor-supported nonprofit organization. So please consider making a donation at iocdf.org/donate so we can continue with these awesome programs. And just it was such an honor to be here with y'all tonight. Yeah, we're going to beat No CD straight. We're coming for you, Dr. McGrath. Yeah, get all your friends not next week. Next week it's Ethan and not me. But no, I'm just kidding. You can get your friends for Ethan too. So Ethan will be back here with y'all next week. And just thank y'all so much for supporting one another and for advocating and for showing up in community. So thankful for all of you. And I hope you have a beautiful night. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I know the right buttons to click. This is always the kicker. Okay, I think I'm hitting the right button. I need to learn how to do this officially. Okay, y'all are going to watch me potentially click the wrong thing. Bye, everybody. Thanks.